Hi, my name is Sydney Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Matthew Brickman, Florida Supreme Court mediator. Welcome to the Mediate This podcast, where we discuss everything mediation and conflict resolution.
Particular questions or what direction stuff takes?
So I thought, I usually interview very organic. Like we just sit down and just have a conversation, and just see where it takes us, based.
I've been through the process a lot of different times.
Your sound is cutting. Your sound's cutting in and out.
Okay.
I'm getting it, and then it goes muffled, and then it comes back again.
Let me plug in my, I don't think that will work. I don't know if it's my headphones or my computer. Still sounding that way to you?
Let's see. I'm checking. Let's see. So that's all fine. All right. It sounds a little bit better now.
Okay. I'm a little bit closer. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't know if maybe
all right.
Let me take these.
Okay.
Let me take these out and see if this works better.
Oh, that's much better.
Okay, yeah, there's something with my AirPods that are doing something funky that I can't understand.
Oh, yeah, that's much better. Usually for mediation, I'll have my headphones in and whatnot, but it's the weekend. My wife's not in the other room working on doing her video conferencing. So, we don't have the lawn people outside, and I don't need to block off the noise. I'm like, no, we'll just keep it out of the ears today.
Okay.
All right, so I'll just do my quick little opening and just hit the ground running.
Love it.
So welcome back to another episode of Mediate This. Today I am joined by Lawrence Joss. He is the founder and director of Parental Alienation Anonymous. How are you, Lawrence?
I'm doing great today, man. Thanks for taking the time out to have a conversation with me. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Yeah. So I just have to say first, I was doing a little homework on you. You went to the University of Arizona, I see.
Correct, I did.
Yeah, but both my parents went to University of Arizona.
That is very funny. That's an interesting area. Tucson's definitely an interesting town.
Tucson's where I was born.
That's funny, actually, and well, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So now I left when I was 1, so I don't have any memory of it. But what's interesting is I've lived in Tucson, Texas, North Dakota, and Florida. And currently I've spent most of my life in Florida, just not consecutive. But I've always told my family, I said, if I ever disappear, you'll find me in Scottsdale. Like my heart is in Arizona. I love the desert and the mountains. Like I love Florida. I like the ocean, but there's something about the desert and mountains that's so peaceful.
Yes, no, it's a really tranquil space, and it's interesting, and it's evolving rapidly, just like other parts of the country are. It's very different than when I went to school there 30 years ago, and I presume when you were there last. But it's it's definitely beautiful being in the desert.
Yeah, yeah. So where are you currently?
I'm out in Ojai, California.
Okay.
And I was born in South Africa and moved out to the States when I was 10. And I've always lived on the West Coast. I'm a West Coast kind of guy. I don't get why people pick, cold, humidity, anything like that. I like the moderate temperature. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Doesn't get too hot, doesn't get too cold.
So born in South Africa. When did you leave South Africa?
In the 1980s, there was a decent amount of migration over here because the rand, which was the currency and is the currency in South Africa, was still very, very strong.
Okay.
Or a lot of the political stuff was happening more mainstream. And then, now it's like the valuation now is maybe an eighth or a tenth of what it was when we left. That's why there was such a big migration at that time.
Got it. So my parents are in Nairobi, Africa.
Oh.
Yeah, they're in Kenya. So they've been there, I think, 11 years now.
Huh. That's fascinating. And why Kenya?
That's where they went. So they opened up an orphanage and started a church. And so, and my dad does he does so much stuff. He's probably one of the smartest people I know. But he's doing training and different things over there with individuals and companies. And so, yeah, they've been over there with their orphanage for I think 11 years now. I think it's been 11 years now.
Wow, that is some awesome work. How cool is that?
Yeah. So you've got a couple of other. So well, actually, I want to get back to the to your Parental Alienation Anonymous, because that's the main thing you're doing now, right?
You know, that it's an interesting question. And yes, it's the main thing. And we've had some organizational issues because strategically it wasn't great because there was so many different things going on. So we're actually in the process of changing the organizational name, which will be Parental Alienation Advocates.
Okay.
And Parental Alienation Anonymous is one of the doors, and it's a 12-step meeting to support families and parents, grandparents that are struggling with alienation, estrangement, erasure, stuff like that. And it's an incredibly robust, beautiful community. But it's just one of the doors that we have open to bring people into the community.
And so okay, so that was leading me to some of my other things. So I know that you know, I think, and I guess it's probably under the umbrella, like you said, there's the support group, and then I know that then you have like a Family Hope Project, you've got training, you even have you have a podcast, right? Family Disappeared podcast. And so all of those, I guess, are like what you're talking about, the doors under then as you're restructuring to advocate, those are all different doors. Is that right?
100%. And what the overall mission of the organization is to reach as many families and people as possible and support people where they are. And some people might want to come in a 12-step door and have a support group. And other people might want to just hang out and listen to the podcast and hear experiences of different parents and grandparents and children and professionals. And some people might want to do something like the Family Hope Project, which is a virtual online art gallery, advocacy, and education platform. And we take art from people from all over the world, whether it's dance, music, painting, sculpture. They label it anonymously and they put a little description in, and it's a really, really visceral experience for people to explain what they're going through, whether it's in the court system, whether it's in divorce, whether it's in mediation, whatever it is. It's just a place people get to say something through any form of expression that they want. And we're finding it is it's a really great door for people to come in that don't want to join anything else. They just want to express themselves, you know?
Well, and then you also have a Facebook group, right?
We have a Facebook group for the Family Hope Project, Family Disappeared, and the 12-step. They're all separate Facebook groups, and there's a lot of people that choose to enter a bunch of the doors. And then we also have what we call the foundational trainings, which I think are the most important, where we're teaching, you know, folks communication, like nonviolent communication. We get into meditation, forgiveness, equanimity, sympathetic joy, which is great, which is joy in someone else's joy. There's family systems training. There's on living and dying, which is a really awesome thing, just to leave a memorial for ourselves as parents or grandparents that are disconnected, so our kids or grandkids can know who we are, and so many wonderful things that we're doing, and it's moving rapidly. Yeah.
So, I noticed, I, I don't remember where I found it. But I was reading, this stuff and was like, it's an interesting path because, it's interesting. Usually nobody wakes up and says, yeah, you know what? I didn't wake up one day and be like, I'm going to be a mediator. I wasn't a little kid that said one day I want to sit in the middle of two people in the middle of a divorce. That's what I want to do with my life. Like, I can't wait to be stuck in the friction of life. And I would imagine you probably didn't wait, as a kid, you weren't like, I want to be the director of a parental alienation advocacy, nonprofit. But life has an interesting way of us, I guess, happening. Life has an interesting way of happening, and we end up finding our purpose in this life, our calling, what we were created for, and it's usually through our own struggles. Is that how you got into this? Because, like, for me as a mediator, I got divorced and all the fighting and everything, and a judge ordered my ex and I to mediation. I had never heard about it, didn't know about it. And I sat in the middle of it going, this is the coolest process in the world. I could do this. And so I actually went to college and got my degrees and then got my certification and found my life calling. And interestingly enough, tomorrow I have mediation. Tomorrow is number 3,000.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I've mediated over 10,000 hours of my life. I've done 2,999 as of today, as the date of recording. But it wasn't like a dream, like, oh, one day I just want to become a mediator. How did this, like, and parental alienation, like, were you a product of it? Did you know someone? How did you get into it?
Well, first of all, 3,000 hours of anything, that's incredible.
Well, no. 10,000 hours, 3,000 mediations.
Okay, that's even more. Well, congratulations. That's a
Yeah.
wonderful birthday celebration coming up. That's very cool. Yeah, and yeah, you're definitely 100% on. I didn't come to this willingly, and I have three daughters,
Okay.
and got married at a really young age. Was in love and had three kids, and my partner at that time was estranged or alienated from her father. And as someone marrying someone and hearing the story, my dad's not a great guy, and I don't have any kind of relationship with him. You're like, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
and you move on. And about 10 years into our relationship, they reconciled. Family is incredibly important to me, and definitely feel like I was somewhat of a bridge. And he was just a regular guy, just like you and I. And then, me and my ex separated, and my eldest daughter at that time was 12 years old, and then my younger daughter was like 8 and 5, and my 12-year-old stayed with my ex for the first year. And I thought it was just okay. I thought it was normal. She was just figuring out her stuff as a young person. And as I've gone through this process, like, I had no definition for what I was going through. Initially my ex had told her attorney that she wanted all three kids because, I was unstable. And, it came to it that I had my other two daughters 50% of the time. And a year in, I got my 13-year-old then back at the time, back 50% of the time also, because there was some other issues going on in the family. And for several years it was okay. And then, like, parental alienation was born from the day that my kid came out, because she was soothing my ex's nervous system, right? Like, limbic and physical attunement usually comes from the parent to the child. But when there's some kind of attachment disorder, the child's actually soothing the parent, which is backwards. And I find myself separated, getting divorced, having these struggles with my kids, and it's so incredibly painful. And then my oldest daughter stopped talking to me again, and then my middle daughter stopped talking to me, and I had all this physical pain because I was trying to navigate the world. And I walked backwards into where I am today. I started doing a lot of interpersonal work, and through the interpersonal work, I landed up doing a 2-year Buddhist chaplaincy program at Yapaya in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with Roshi Joan Halifax. And the way you do the 2 years is, the first year is inner chaplaincy, where you're really figuring out yourself. And the second year supposedly is like your outer chaplaincy, like, what's your calling?
Right.
And at that time for me, I'm like, I'm going to start a food truck. You know what I mean? I'm like,
I like to eat. I'm going to start a food truck.
Yeah, it's going to be Donna based. Everything's going to be free. People pay, take what they like, don't do whatever. And that's kind of like where I was at. And then after that is when my middle daughter stopped talking to me, and all this friction was going on. And I was doing, again, all this interpersonal work. And then I realized that there was trauma within the family, and there was all this dysfunction going on. And my daughters weren't going to grow out of it. They weren't going to grow out of what was ever happening. There was actually something, again, trauma based, that was affecting the relationships, and that I had to do something different. And the first door that I walked through was like a 12-step door. I've been around 12-step for 35 years. I started at a really young age, and in Tucson, Arizona was my first 12-step meeting to Gamblers Anonymous, at 18 years old. And so I've been around 12-step for a long time and had all this pain around my daughters and didn't know what to do. And I came in through the Al-Anon door, and Al-Anon is about families and family systems and relationships, where like Alcoholics Anonymous and a lot of the other AA groups are more I-centric and I and me-centric. So I'm in all this pain. I don't know what to do. The 12-step groups aren't helping me anymore. And I'm like, I need to do something different. So I'm like, I'm going to start another group. And not because I want to help people, but because I don't want to die. Like,
Right.
this is isolating, lonely, and painful. So that's kind of a weird, long around answer of how it happened. It's just because of the pain, you know?
So, a couple questions. When this started to manifest and whatnot, what year are we talking?
I started, was probably about 5 years ago, starting to like talk about the stuff on social media. And I started off with something called Papa Duck. And I call my kids my baby ducks. And when I call them, when I used to have contact and call them, I'd leave a message and go quack, 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 you know?
Yeah.
And I started doing this, and it wasn't from a really great place of integration.
Right.
And then I started planning the 12-step stuff maybe about 4 years ago, and we launched
Okay.
it nearly 3 years ago.
Okay. And when you and your ex, I guess, got divorced, what state was that?
California.
That was California. And you said the first year, your oldest just exclusively stayed with your ex, and then you had 50-50 with the other two.
Yeah, and part of the dynamic of this pathology is like my oldest daughter wouldn't get in a car with me. She wouldn't have a meal with me. She wouldn't
Right.
talk with me. And my ex was in an active addiction at that time. So there was a lot of stuff going on. And again, I'm trying to be the good guy. I'm trying to take the high road. I'm trying to do the next right thing. And it's not really useful. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? If I don't have a lot of information, I'm just trying to be a good person and people please. I land up causing a lot of harm by trying to be a good person without having any real understanding of what's happening within the family system. So yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things so I've been doing mediation for almost 17 years. And like we were saying, I mean, I've done, tomorrow will be 3,000. And when it comes to family law, so I'm in Florida, so I'm on the other side of the U.S. What's interesting is when it comes to mediation, Florida was one of the first states back in 1987 to enact mediation. They've been on the cutting edge of family law in the entire United States, really modeling. Now, most of the practitioners in Florida will say, well, okay, we're on the cutting edge, to where I say, well, okay, look, it's a butter knife, but we're on the cutting edge, right? So, I mean, we are leading the way in our policies, our House and Senate, all the different governors through the years have done a lot of family forward things, which has been good to really help cut it. But parental alienation, you can have the perfect model set up, and we're still dealing with humanity. We're dealing with human behavior. And while the legal system can be like, this is the box, this is black and white, and this is how things work. Well, yeah, but within that box and parameter, when a child is with a parent for X amount of days, no one's monitoring or, you know, watching what's being said and done, which then can lead to that overall alienation. And I hear it a lot of times, and mostly with fathers, where they're like, look, I don't want to rock the boat. This, and trying to do the good guy thing, like you were saying, trying to do the right thing, saying, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm not going to force it. But what all that does is it empowers the other side and feeds the other side. And if there is, I've said many a times, and I noticed it even with my ex, I mean, and I used to say it jokingly. Of course, the more I do mediation and the more I've learned and whatnot, it was pretty profound what I was saying, and didn't understand what I was saying at the time, because I used to joke with my ex. I remember being over at my mother-in-law's for Thanksgiving and joking with her, going, "Hey, who was the doctor that delivered my wife, and she would tell me, I'm like, well, you should really get your money back because they forgot to cut the umbilical cord.
Oh,
It's still attached. And then I saw that with my own kid. My daughter and I were estranged for an entire year due to parental alienation, lies, manipulation, but from grandmother and ex-wife. And to where we didn't even have, I actually had my kids lived with me. My ex-wife gave me the kids and moved away. So I had my kids when they were like 6 and 8, and they're almost, by the end of the year, they'll be 26 and 28. So we're talking 20 years ago. And what was interesting was when my daughter was 18, it's just like you were saying with a 12-year-old, it's like, well, how do you force a 12-year-old to have dinner, get in the car, come over? Well, with my daughter, she was 18, but she was still in high school. And so, we still had a parenting plan. And we never had a bad word. We didn't have an argument. It was nothing. But the seed had been planted for so long. They were waiting for the right moment to pull that trigger. And she went over to have dinner, innocent, went over to have dinner at grandma's and didn't come home that night. And I figured, well, they'll just take her to school tomorrow. And the next day I text her, I said, you didn't come home last night. She goes, yeah, I'm not coming home and you can't make me. We already talked to a lawyer and the police and I'm living here. What? No, you're not. Lawrence, now I don't play around. Now, granted, like you said, we don't have there's not a manual for this. And I didn't know about groups like yours. I'm just like, okay, I'm a mediator. I have a parenting plan. I'm gonna file a petition. I'm gonna file a motion for emergency pickup, and I'm gonna force you to come home. It's just gonna be that simple. I'm not playing. So I filed it, and I told my daughter, "You're coming home." She goes, "No, you're not." I said, "I'm gonna sell your car if you don't come home." "No, you're not." I got in the car, drove to CarMax, and sold it that night. I don't play. She finds out from her brother the next day at school that I sold her car. She's like, "What?" Here's something. I'm like, "You're coming home." She's like, "No, I'm not." So look, I provide the gifts. I can turn the gifts off. So I turned off her cell phone. You turn off an 18-year-old girl's cell phone, you just went for the jugular. But of course, I'm also limiting my ability to communicate with her. But I turned it off. Well, that did it. And so then she's emailing. Well, I'm like, "Oh, well, how are you emailing?" "On the laptop that I got you. I remotely locked her out of her laptop. Now you don't get the computer I bought you. You don't get the car, you don't get the phone."
wow.
So, and meanwhile, I'm still waiting for the court. The court comes back and says, "Well, you do have a parenting plan, but we're not going to force her." And I'm like, "What? I have a parenting plan." "Well, we're not going to force her." I was heartbroken. And so I said, come and get your stuff. And so she came and got her stuff. And actually on my podcast, so we ended up, it took us a year, completely estranged, no words, no nothing, but we made it back. And now we are better than ever. And our story has impacted so many people. We actually, on the podcast, her and I have told the story to so many people, but we never actually sat down and said, "What in the world were you thinking?" And we did this. Lawrence, I just turned on the mic and said, "Let's go." And it's on my podcast. Very, very interesting because of what she was told. All empty promises. Every single one. And she thought, you know what? It'll be about a week or so. Had no idea it was going to do the damage it did.
Wow.
But she was a kid. She was really a pawn. And I see that, and many times in mediation, as a mediator getting to go back and forth between the rooms, I see this going, okay, and like you said, like your daughter was feeding your ex's issue and whatnot. And a lot of times, when I talk to people about their parenting plans, I'm like, look, we need to do this in a way that makes sense so that we can sever the connection and the umbilical cord, because we don't want the child to have separation anxiety, but we don't want the parent to have the separation anxiety either. And so I'm very cognizant of that, going, we want mom to be okay. But at the same time, we don't want to overwhelm dad and then dad shuts down and he's not an active participant. We need this to make sense for everybody. So this isn't this shock and awe that mom is now looking for issues, dad is overwhelmed, and the child's caught in the middle. And so, that's a tricky dance, but I know it because I lived it. Similar to what you're saying. Now, I did read something, and I just have to ask you because I don't understand this. Okay, in something that you had written, it said you refer to parental alienation as a disease.
Sure. So again, I just want to qualify for stuff like we use the word parental alienation, and we also qualify that parental alienation is a really big tent, and the word might not resonate with everyone. So estrangement might resonate with someone, erasure might resonate, disconnection. It doesn't matter. It's a gathering place. But in the form of parental alienation and it being a disease, it's a disease of attachment, and usually it's trauma informed, and very often it's transgenerational. Like if I look at my ex's side, so on the maternal side, like she has some kind of trauma from her mother that her mother experienced, and then she had this attachment disorder with her mom where she was taking care of her mother. At a really young age, she had to choose between her mother and her father's whole family. So she's now in her 54 or something and has never connected with that whole side of the family. Right.
Okay.
And my kids don't talk to anyone in my whole family. It's not like they have an issue with me and they don't like me. Like they have to sever ties with everything in order to take care of their mother is the way that the disease manifests. And then if you look at it a little bit further and you look at my part, because I co-created the family system. I lived in the family system. I was part of the family system signing off on it. And a lot of my recovery is owning like, hey, wow, I had a part in that. Is my attachment to my mother is when I was in vitro in her belly, she was very dysregulated and very anxious, and I was soothing her nervous system at a really, really, really young age. And you see a lot of enmeshment and codependency in families, and that's where a lot of it stems from. So I was attracted to someone that needed that same kind of attention and that same kind of love, and that's the wife that I picked.
Got it.
Right. So this whole thing, this disease, pathology, attachment disorder, transgenerational trauma, like if you really dig deep down to the roots of it, at least for me, like I'm predisposed to picking a partner like this. And I keep repeating relationships where people are emotionally needing something because that feels like love. And it wasn't until I started doing my own interpersonal work, like that was just this real deep need of a tiny child that I'm still trying to fill with my partners, and that's why I'm picking them. And that's why the love felt so intense. But was it love, or was it just something dysfunctional that I'm used to? And there I created a family system that now is a challenge for my kids, because this is really about the kids, right? It's
Sure.
really about the child-centric point of view.
Yeah. So, and it's funny when you talk interpersonal. So after my divorce, was when, like I said, we spent, Lawrence, so we had a very amicable divorce. We filed everything the day after Mother's Day. We were divorced 3 days before Father's Day. Very quick, no attorneys, no mediation, no nothing, just in and out, simple, no issues. It wasn't until about a year later that it started a 12-year war. We were in and out of court, 43 motions for contempt enforcement, 12 years of litigation. And of course, the kids caught in the middle of it. And it wasn't until, the judge ordered us to mediation, that was where I was like, okay, fine. Well, so then I went to school in order to become a mediator, a lot of interpersonal classes. My favorite class was interpersonal conflict. I actually aced the class. I got 100%. It was the best therapy I have ever had. I learned my triggers. I learned what made me me. Like, what do I like? I didn't realize that when I was dating, I was really a chameleon. I would morph into whatever. It's like, well, what do you like to eat? That's what I like to eat. Well, no, 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 no. What do you like to do? Whatever you want to do. And it wasn't until the divorce, and there was, I think it was like 9 years in between like getting divorced and then I think when I met my current wife. But with my schooling and all the education that came along with it, a lot of interpersonal, I mean, I took anger management. That was one of the best courses ever. Like my ex knew every single button. I didn't even know my own buttons. So she could come up and give me a look and I would explode. And she feeds on the chaos. And I didn't know that. And so I found that I was constantly reacting instead of responding. And that just kept me in that cycle. And then, interestingly enough, kids were the same way. They would respond or react to whatever I was doing. And it was interesting that once I took the interpersonal conflict class and started to really, like you said, you really get to the root, not just like I tell people all the time in mediation, I'm like, no, 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 no. You are picking the fruit. You guys are just covered in just sloppy fruit. Let's get to the root of this thing. What's really going on behind the scenes? Because I know for me, until I got to the root of the matter, it was just a cycle. I was just stuck in a cycle. The people I was dating, my grandmother, she's been gone a couple of years now, but she was awesome. She was like, Matthew, they're no better than your ex. Like, I mean, we would go to dinner and have a dinner interaction, one dinner interaction. She's like, your picker's broken. And I mean, my own grandmother's going, your picker's broken. Nope, nope, this isn't it. Nope, it's the same. And she goes, they just look better, but it's the same thing that you got out of. Oh, just like you said, it was a cycle. I didn't even know I was in it. And it wasn't until I started with the interpersonal that I was able to start breaking that cycle because I started to figure out who I was. I think I tell a lot of people, you know, why are you getting divorced? Well, who are you? I don't know. Well, who am I? I don't know. Well, let's go find out together. And then they find out going, I don't think I like you. I don't think I like you either. And then they get divorced. They have no idea. I'm like, if you don't know who you are, you don't know what you're sharing. And I think everybody needs therapy, interpersonal conflict, anger management, and then you can get a license to get married.
No, it's such a valid point you're picking up and sharing with me, because all these parents and family members that are coming into the program or into one of these doors, most of their first steps are talking to an attorney, a therapist, a judge, whatever it is, and no one knows who they are, what's going on. They're all dysregulated. They're all reacting to anything and everything, and they're blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
And the point of a lot of the work we do is, find yourself to heal your life, heal yourself to heal your life, come home. If you don't come home, you're just going to keep doing the same thing and the kids are going to suffer. And I just wanted to touch on one other point you made, that it took like a year after your divorce before stuff started to blow up. So my first year in separation before the divorce was finalized. My oldest daughter didn't talk to me, and then she was reintegrated with my other daughters, and I had them 50% of the time. And then I started experiencing like physical pain from all the stress and stuff, and that became the tipping point for my oldest daughter to stop talking to me again. Like,
Okay.
and I think it's a really important point, because a lot of families are experiencing forms and fashions of alienation or estrangement, and it doesn't take hold until it does, but it's there. And
Yeah.
only in, I think, 1% of the cases does it actually get to these extremes where people are on the outer edges of the bell curve. So it's interesting how it's always there. It's growing, and sometimes it has its own energy. It has its own inertia. It starts to move because of the language and the way stuff's presenting, and then the kids start to present and start to move it in their own way. And then sometimes it just hits that tipping point.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it depends on the age of the child, their maturity, what they know. I mean, and one of the things that I've noticed in the years mediating is, and it's getting worse, not better. is the parent-child relationship lines are so blurred because there is no I am the parent, you are the child. The children, especially in a divorce arena, the child becomes the confidant. The child, you hear it all the time. Oh my gosh, my mother is my best friend. It's like your mother should not be your best friend. Your mother is your mother. Go get a friend. But when that line gets blurred, and sometimes, parents use the child as a sounding board, or it's their confidant, or hey, let's get the same outfit and let's go do like when that line gets blurred, problems start to happen.
So I was doing the 2-year Buddhist chaplaincy program at Japaya, and we part of the programming was to do systems theory, right? Because this is all a systemic issue. So
Okay.
we're doing systems training, and we break out into dyads or triads, and we start looking at systems in our lives that we want to kind of like look at. So I'm like, hey, my family system sucks. So we draw out the family system, who's on top of the family system, how's the family system structured. And
Okay.
while we're starting the exercise, there's me and my ex, or my soon-to-be ex on the top, and then the kids chronologically underneath it. And as we start to go through the exercise, I realize that I'm on the bottom of the family system. My oldest daughter has been elevated to a parent status at 12 years old or 13 years old. So exactly what you're saying, like the whole system gets, tipped on its axis. The kids become the parents. The targeted parent, or the parent that has the problem, becomes like a lower on the system, and they all make these decisions, and you're not included in it as a parent, whether it's a mom, a dad, whatever it is. It's fascinating.
Well, and many times, parents say, well, I'll tell you, my kid is not going to like this plan. They're not going to like it. And I said, tell me the last time where an inmate got to say to the warden, you know what, warden, I don't think I like getting up. Like, no, inmates do not run the asylum. No, 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 no. I said, now your kids, look, those are your kids. They have an opinion, but they don't have a say. They have an opinion, and you need to let them know that their opinions are valued. Otherwise, as parents, we're unilaterally making decisions for them. So I'm like, look, it's a suggestion box. Thank you. Put it in the suggestion box. You're not in charge. And many a times I have to then reel them back, take them all the way to the top, the header of a parenting plan. I said, what does this say? I said, it says parenting plan, not child plan. These aren't rules for children. These are rules for parents who are acting like children. These are rules for you. You need the rules, not your kids. Your kids are going to be fine as long as you get the rules. That's why a parenting plan. And reeling them in, helps as I'm going back and forth with them and helping them negotiate and get these plans done. It's so many of them are like you're saying, like with the hierarchy. I had read, I don't remember where, in one of my many studies, they actually listed the hierarchy, and it was interesting because many a times, just like you said, like you're on the bottom and the kid is on the top, right? So I remember reading like the top 5 things. Like if you're going to put things in, just and many a times I have to warn people. I'm like, look, this isn't your entire life. Like if this is a totem pole, there's just the top 5. There's many things after that. We're just talking the top 5. So, if we were going to list things in a healthy order within a family unit, if you had friends and family, if you had a wife, yourself, children, work, how would you structure it? And I remember seeing it that number 1 is self, because it goes back to, look, even on an airplane, please put on your own oxygen mask before helping that next to you. If you don't take care of yourself, if you don't know who you are, then you are no good to anybody else. Now, it's not selfish. It's self-preservation. And it's like, I need to know who I am so I can be the best husband or the best mom or the best student or whatever. It's know yourself, right? So you're first. Then if you're in a relationship, spouse is next. Okay, great. Okay, well, then what? Work. Work is next. And many of people are like, what? My work? And I'm like, yeah. And then what? And then your kids. and then your friends and family. And they're like, no, that's all wrong. And I'm like, okay, how would you do it? Usually it's like, well, no, my kids are my world. I'm like, and guess what? When your kids emancipate, you and your husband are getting divorced. Welcome to reality, because that's your common thread. Oh, we're parents for them. And when they're gone, who are you? I don't know. We're done. I said, no. I said, look, it's you, and then it's you and your spouse, because the two become one. Now, life is going to happen. Okay, great. You're going to then have kids, but you both have jobs. And if you don't have jobs, well, then you're probably not going to have kids because you can't afford kids, right? So fine, you have work. Then you have your kids. Don't put your kids in front of your job. You'll be unemployed. So, and I said, and don't put your wife or your husband before your kids, because you're going to have resentment. And don't work before your spouse. You're going to create resentment as well. And definitely don't put your family in front of your kids, because now your family's going to tell you how to parent. Well, that's not healthy. You should go back up to that your spouse. The two of you should be parent. And so I take them through this going, if you don't have this structured, oh, that's why you're sitting in front of me. Okay, let's see if we can fix this so you don't come back. And that's sort of the structure that you're talking about, that systematic structure, right?
100% that systematic structure. And I love that you're having these conversations with parents, because we are pretty dumb when we come in a situation where we don't have any kind of tools. And I'd be so curious to be a fly on the wall while you're explaining this to people. And most people barely have the energy to show up. I just think it's a wonderful service to provide. And it might take saying it several times before people hear it, I would presume.
Yeah. So I'll tell you.
For more information about my services or to schedule your mediation with me, either in person or using my iChat mediation virtual platform built by Cisco Communications, visit me online at iMediateinc.com. Call me at 561-262-9121, toll free at 877-822-1479, or email me at mbrickman@iChatmediation.com.